Broadway beat. Broadway. Broadway beat. Broadway beat. Broadway beat. Broadway. Listen to the Broadway beat. Broadway makes you wanna move your feet. Everybody's tapping into everything that's happening on Broadway beats. Broadway beats. Broadway beats. Broadway beat.
Hello, I'm Richard Ridge, and welcome to Broadway Beat, our weekly half-hour behind-the-scenes look at the very best of a New York theater on Broadway and beyond. This week, Whoopi Goldberg shares some thoughts on her return to Broadway with her one-woman show entitled Whoopi. We'll also look back on the illustrious career of Tony Award-winning composer Cy Coleman, who we recently lost. But we start things off by giving you a sneak peek at the new Broadway musical Little Women, starring Tony Award winner Sutton Foster, Danny Gurwin, and Maureen McGovern. Adapted from the Louisa May Alcott literary classic and the 1949 Academy Award-winning MGM motion picture, Little Women the Musical has a book by Alan Nee, music by Jason Howland, and lyrics by Mindy Dickstein. It's choreographed by Michael Lichtenfeld and is directed by Susan H. Schulman. Based on Alcott's own family experiences, the musical follows the time-honored tale of the March sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, as they grow up in Civil War America.
I'm ready to take a bow. I've taken a song around with all that I am. My dearest Mama, there will be Christmas after all. Christmas, when we see our finest dreams.
We really honestly believe that her journey is so potent and so theatrical and resonates so much to people today that I think it's going to be a bit surprising. I do. It's not a museum piece at all. Yeah.
It's as contemporary today as it was. I mean, you look at these women, everybody thinks that, the men were always the strong ones. It really wasn't. It was the women that held everything together.
Absolutely. And there's Marmee left alone with these four girls as her husband is off being an army chaplain. And she has to raise these women. And she's so modern in her thinking. She knows that they each are different. And she wants to let them grow within themselves and then be able to go beyond. And this is very difficult for her to do by herself. And she does it. I mean, she knows she has to do it. And then here is Jo trying to forge her way into a world in which women had to change their names to be accepted, and to find her passion, to find her voice, really, and what she goes through in trying to hold her family together and yet know she has to let go. I mean, all these are emotions that we go through continually, and also a war, people working through a war and times of war and trying to make sense of that is unfortunately something we're still experiencing. But I think the thing that will be most surprising is how much fun it is. I don't think people expect it to be funny, and it's very funny and very entertaining as well as obviously moving. And I think that was very important to us, to know that these women had a great life and had a life that was very exciting to them. They didn't sit around and wait for things to happen. They went out and they got things to happen, and they did things and they made things happen. And in that, there was a great deal of activity and a great deal of fun.
It's such an incredible novel, 600 pages of story after story. It's there's probably like 25 subplots in Little Women, the original source material. But what I found so remarkable about working on it is Alan's book captures the intent, I think, so well of Louisa May Alcott, and as a result, you have this one incredible story to follow. I find as a writer, in a book show, it's so much easier to find the moments to sing because they're so born of dramatic tension. And Alan's book does that so well that everything you saw today, even without its context, I know in the context of the show is so heightened by what's happened before that it's easy to make it sing. And then it's just about finding the right thing to make it sing. So it's been great. It's been really fun.
I actually started it, almost 10 years ago when I just got so fascinated with the working woman of the 19th century, and I adapted Little Women for teenagers, just without music. And then it went so well, we developed it with the composer and lyricist over a number of years. Actually, we've been working on it 6 years now. And it's just been a passion of mine. I love 19th century American literature. I've done a Scarlet Letter for television, so I'm not unfamiliar with this territory. And Emerson was one of the most influential people in my life, I kind of feel. And they were a good friend of Louisa May Alcott's family, so it all tied together. And also the rite of passage. I love the rite of passage in it. I love the fact that it's about a loving family, something I've been looking for all my life. Those are some of the reasons why I wrote this.
So believe that she mattered, and believe that she always will always be with you. She'll be part of the days you'll be up to feel. She will live in your bounty. She will live as you carry on your life.
What I love about this piece, they've actually expanded the role somewhat of Marmee into a stronger presence all through the piece. I love this character because she's, for a Victorian woman during the Civil War, I mean, very much ahead of her time, very forward-thinking, very independent. Here she is raising her children, 4 girls, while her husband is away volunteering during the war. Which certainly resonates to so many families today, sad to say. And she's just their rock. She's still very playful, and you see pieces of her in all the girls. Their different personalities, but she's just a very strong, caring. She's a huge heart, and that's what I love about her.
You forget how strong these women were. I mean, even pioneer women and these women of Victorian age, because they had to control it. They had to run the house and everything, and take care of. Talk about the wonderful score that you sang.
I'm sorry?
The score that you sing, the beautiful song that we got to hear you sing today up in the attic.
Days of Plenty. After my daughter Beth dies, Jo is sent into just a tailspin. She can't move past it, and her grief she can't get over, and nothing that any of us can do seems to help. And she actually accuses me of being, how do you go on? Like I'm cold and callous in a way, and I have to tell her that I have to honor Beth's life by going on, that I can't fall apart. I have girls to raise, I have a household to do, but really the strongest part is to honor the life of Beth by making your life as meaningful as possible.
It was so touching.
Looks are solitary, but I see you every day. How you live in your own way, and you make me wanna dare to take a chance on you.
Well, I play Laurie, who is essentially, he essentially becomes sort of the 5th March sister. Like he's sort of the lonely kid next door who they sort of accept into their family because he doesn't have, he lives with his grandfather. And he and Jo, Sutton and I become best friends in the show, and then eventually he, actually asks her to marry him, and she refuses him. So it sends them both sort of into a tailspin, but it's all about them growing up together, and it's about old friends and family, and there's so much, the family has so much history, and there's so much, the characters are so rich that, there's so much to pull from and to create and to play with. It's really been an exciting process for all of us.
How well did you know the book before you went into the project?
Pretty well. I read it again. I mean, I read it in college, and I read it again when we started rehearsal and when we were in Durham doing the out-of-town stuff. And it's amazing. There's so many stories. There's so many wonderful, you could theatricalize so much of it. And I think they've done an amazing job of picking the right things and the theatrical things and the stuff that really everyone in the show has a special moment or a wonderful scene or something to really, not only show themselves but also to show the characters. And I think it's a wonderful through line and an arc for everybody. And I hope everyone loves it. I mean, we're all really so grateful and thrilled to be part of it and for it to finally come to fruition, because a lot of people, we've been involved with it for so long, so it's really great. It's been really exciting.
So how familiar were you with the book before you went into the project?
I wasn't familiar at all with the book. Unfortunately, I had watched the, everyone knows Little Women. Like, everyone knows Little Women, but they don't know, I had never read the book. I had seen the Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon film and knew the story, but only from that adaptation. And after I accepted the job, I went, well, I better read the book. And I've read the book, and I've read Louisa May Alcott's biography, and I've watched all the films, all of the different, there were different, June Allison played Jo at one point, Katharine Hepburn, of course, and then I watched the Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon film again, trying to just do as much research and be as well read and watched as possible.
Does that help you when you look at other people's interpretation of this and cull it all together?
Well, I think with this it's a very specific job because I'm interpreting a role from a classic piece of literature. So I feel I'm never going to be able to please anyone because people had very strong ideas about this character and this story. And it's impossible to be able to, because we could take the story and we could take the book and just put it on the stage and make it very literal, but then we're dealing with we're dealing with a musical, so we are musicalizing it and it became making it more theatrical. So there have been, the story is still there, but who knows? I hope that, I definitely know we've captured the spirit of this story, and I only hope that I can capture the spirit of this character. And by watching all of the different women who have portrayed her and reading as much as I can, it all just sort of goes in and it's all there so that I can just try to be as, I don't know, I don't think that I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to do a little Katharine Hepburn here and a little June Allison here. It's just all in there somewhere, and I just try to do me.
I'm ready for
Academy Award winner Whoopi Goldberg has returned to Broadway's Lyceum Theater for a limited 12-week engagement with her one-woman show entitled Whoopi. It is the same show that launched her career 20 years ago. We spoke with Whoopi briefly before her opening, and she shared some thoughts on her characters 20 years later and being discovered by award-winning director Mike Nichols.
I was doing this show literally around the world and around the country. And one of the stops was at Dance Theater Workshop downtown. And Mike Nichols and Judith Ivey had a thing where they took each other to see something they hadn't seen before, and Judy took Mike to see my show. And he then decided he wanted to present it. And I said, sure, okay, because I thought he was kidding. And so it went on, and we tried to find a off-Broadway house, actually. And it turned out he couldn't find one, and all that was available was the Lyceum. And he said, so that's where we're going. I thought, uh-oh, all right. So came in with it, and everything sort of went from there. So that's how it kind of happened. It's the quintessential Hollywood story.
I remember going to Amsterdam 20 years ago. And I was, thank you. You been? Did we share a pipe together or something? I love Amsterdam, man. It's a kicking town. And I found everything I wanted over there. Legally. And I had a good time. You know, that's really primarily why I went, you know, was to get, you know, that little hash thing going that I like. And I thought, well, let me have this experience. And I was bowled over by the fact that there was so much happening in that city. And when I was walking around, I happened upon a building, and there was a plaque on it. And I looked, because, you know, I'm interested in architecture. Yeah, because I'm from New York, man. You have to be interested in architecture. Falls.
Well, you know, Fontaine hasn't changed an awful lot. He's my leading character. He's a junkie with a perspective, a very smart, very educated, but flawed human being whose mindset is pretty wonderful. I kind of like it. He's very political, very observational in his politics. So he's there, and he was quite the same, but a little bit older now, a little slower. There's a new lady who's a little strange in dealing with everything that's going on in the world as it relates to her. There's a young girl who finds herself pregnant and tries to figure out a way to handle it, and goes through some interesting journey to find out what to do. There's a very odd woman who, she's just odd, but her focus is law and order. And then there's a physically disabled lady who has a wonderful story to tell that is always relevant. And the characters that are with me from 20 years ago are the ones that I feel are still relevant, as is, you know, like the surfer girl who, you know, 20 years ago we were talking about the same issue of young women who are pregnant and what to do. So we're back to that now, you know. As a side note, there are a couple who are not there. One, because the times have changed, and she's no longer relevant in that way, but she's sweet and she's fun to do. So that's the little girl with the long, luxurious blonde hair. So sometimes I do her as a mint on the pillow, if you will, at the end of the show. And sometimes the Jamaican lady shows up, and she's still out there. But, you know, it's a fluid show, so on any given night I make a decision of what I'm going to do. And then I go and do it. So you may see it on Wednesday, and then see it on Friday, and it'll be kind of a different show.
I was going past a mirror in my house, and I was suddenly aware that there was someone behind me. And I thought to myself, now, Lurleen, don't turn around, because you know in the horror movies, when you turn around too fast, you get killed. I didn't want that to happen to me, so I said, Lurleen, be slow. So I eased around, you know, and kind of walked away from the mirror so that I could see what was going on. And when I looked into the mirror again, my God, I couldn't see anything. There was nobody there. And then I started to walk away, and I thought, there it is again. You know what it was? I was being stalked by my own ass.
I didn't see people vacating seats. Let's say it like that. I saw people go to the bathroom and come back, and so that's how I gauge. If they come back from the bathroom, then it's doing all right.
The theater community recently lost Tony Award-winning composer Cy Coleman, who many consider to be the master of the catchy show tune. With lyricist Carolyn Lee, he penned such standard hits as Bewitched, The Best Is Yet to Come, and You Fascinate Me So. Together they wrote the Broadway musicals Wildcat for Lucille Ball and Little Me for Sid Caesar. With lyricist Dorothy Fields, he created the shows Seesaw and Sweet Charity, which is returning to Broadway in spring of 2005. Mr. Coleman also created the Broadway musicals Barnum, On the 20th Century, I Love My Wife, City of Angels, The Will Rogers Follies, and The Life, to name a few. Over the years, we have covered and followed the illustrious career of Mr. Coleman, including an in-depth interview with Broadway Beat correspondent Sidney Meyer. Here's a look at some of the work of Cy Coleman.
You gotta use every friend as a means to an end. Ain't that what a friend is for? You gotta use what you got to get what you want. So take my advice from this moment on. To use what you got. Remember to use what you got. Everything that you want. To get everything
I was drawn to that piano was that it was there, number one. Number two, that I discovered by playing that piano that it made wonderful sounds for me. And I was able to identify the sounds by listening to the radio and picking up things. And I picked up some songs I started playing by myself. I picked it up by ear. Actually, it was the milkman. Now, don't ask me what the milkman was doing at our apartment, but he was there. So, I hope so. And in any case, what happened is that he sent over his son's piano teacher, who was Constance Tallarico. And we found out that I had perfect pitch. Now, you know what perfect pitch is. You know, perfect pitch is one of those phenomenons. You are born with it. I mean, anybody could have it. You don't have to be a musician. But it's one of those things where you can hear a note and pick it out without looking at the piano, or else, you know, or picking up a trumpet or finding out where it comes from. So you just walk around with that knowledge. And sometimes it's very painful for people because if things or instruments are out of tune, it's sort of like chalk on a blackboard. I made a very fast kind of like transition with that, because when I was a kid, I was about 15, 16, I had to make some money, so I played some nightclubs and some, you know, and all kinds of weddings, and I knew how to work all kinds of weddings. I played the Greek wedding, I knew to play all the Greek music, I knew the Italian music, I knew the bar mitzvahs, the meat market openings and so forth, and I made a nice little living for myself, and I'd have to play on pianos that were about sometimes a half a tone out. Now, for somebody with perfect pitch, that's very difficult. So what I would do is I would make an adjustment in my head, and because I would find, and this is a little tough concept for people who don't know this, I would be playing in one key that I knew the sound should be, and it was coming out a half a tone higher. So my hands would stray to where the sound was, and of course then I was out of sync with the orchestra, and so I'd have to go back. So I mean, it was a very strange experience.
To tell my troubles to
Lend a sympathetic ear.
To cheer me when I'm blue.
Wipe away each little tear.
When there's no one left, I am not bereft. There is always little me.
We all agree.
Oh, reliable. When a year goes down the drain,
And you haven't paid a cent.
when I fall in love in vain,
Or you give it up for Lent.
friends can fly the coop, leave me in the soup. Who come through with lentils and to get to fundamentals?
And of course, the famous story with Carolyn was when Bob Fosse had cut one of the verses, you know, and she came in and she saw it and she ran out. And it was the same deserted Erlanger Theater, and she ran down about 3 blocks to City Hall, grabbed a policeman, and managed somehow to drag him back to the theater. And she walked in and she saw Bob Fosse walking. She said, "Arrest him." And then she saw Neil Simon. She said, "Arrest him." And then she saw Furman, and both of them. And then she looked at me and she was thinking, when I could see her mind going, "Well, I've still got some use for him, not him." And so of course the policeman turned around and he said, "Hey, lady," he says, "you mind if I stay for the rest of the show?" And that was, of course, but it became it was a very famous story about, you know, you can get arrested for cutting things.
What are your fondest memories of the original production and working on that?
The fact that it was wonderful. You know, the fact that Dorothy Fields and I wrote a score for the first time together. And everything we seemed to do, I remember Bob Fosse saying when we brought him, "If my friends could see me now," he says, "You people make me cry." And I mean, you don't forget those kind of things. And a show coming together with the way that did. When I remember our first evening in Philadelphia when we just didn't know how it was going to go. And right after that, after the first preview, there was lines around the block. I think we had a nurses convention in there for the first night. And right after that, it was just took off. So, I mean, listen, those kind of memories are wonderful with shows that are that well received and that you enjoy doing yourself. I have many memories of Sweet Charity, but I mean, if you want to take the time, you know, I mean, just keep the tape rolling, it'll keep going. I mean, you don't have that kind of time.
But Gwen Verdon said the same thing from the very first day of working with Sweet Charity and on Sweet Charity. She said it was all just loving experiences and moments that she had too, what you were just talking about.
Well, you know, I mean, when they're like that, I mean, it's the best thing. I think that's what kept me in the business. You know what I mean? It's I had another career going with recording and all that sort of thing. I think that Sweet Charity was a turning point for me. It said to me, okay, stay in the theater.